Hi everyone, this is A9A here, and I'm going to be doing yet another commentary of Fantasy versus Jaedong in the OSL semifinals, the Bacchus OSL. And the game is starting up now, and this is going to be on Outsider. And let me just get the erase and colors first. Here is Fantasy, spawning as the yellow Terran in the 5 o'clock position. And that means Jaedong is at the 9 o'clock position as the Green Teal Zerg. And this is on Outsider. It's a three-player map, and the stats for Terran versus Zerg is 29 victories for Terran and 35 for Zerg. So roughly 45% uh, for Terran. So Jaedong is at a slight advantage there, but he has been slumping immensely. He's been losing to everyone. And also, Jaedong is scouting in the incorrect direction. And actually, Fantasy beat Jaedong on this map in the Pro League Grand Finals. And there's just a couple signs, and another sign, all of them in red, because they all like blood. Because blood is delicious, it is very nutritious. And we'll see what Jaedong manages to do against Fantasy, who beat Jaedong multiple times. Uh, and actually, right now, their victories for each other are, I believe it's 7 for Fantasy and 4 for Jaedong, or 7 for Fantasy and 5 for Jaedong. One of those. And there is a very nicely drawn picture of Jaedong. Um, all Korean people are master artists. And it looks like Jaedong is going to go for a 12 hatch on Outsider. And Fantasy will. I did not notice what he did. It looks like he is going for a mech build yet again, seeing as he is, in fact, Fantasy. And Fantasy always goes for these types of builds. And so, Fantasy not going to be able to get a wall in, so Jaedong is going to be able to scout and see that Fantasy is going for a mech build. We'll see if Fantasy decides to switch it up a little bit, but probably not. Fantasy, I believe right now, seeing as Jaedong has been slumping a lot, um, I believe Fantasy does only need to play a standard game. He doesn't need to go for anything fancy to beat Jaedong. I believe Jaedong, uh, formerly invincible, but not invincible anymore. And it looks like Jaedong is going to go for some sort of two-hatch build. He is not putting up a third hatchery. He is getting his extractor up right now. And yeah, the Overlord's just going towards Fantasy's base now. Fantasy is now going to scout Jaedong. Notice that he is going for some sort of two-base strategy. And spawning pool almost up. He is going to be getting his lair up now. And yeah. There's Fantasy with his scouting SCV. Two drones were trying to attack it. They are no longer trying to attack it. And there's the lair going up at the natural expansion at a more exposed position, but it was slightly harder for Fantasy to scout. And there is the factory, and it looks like Fantasy is going to go for either more factories or starport really fast. Probably noticing that Jaedong was going for some sort of two-hedge tech build, and so Fantasy is going to have to tech up as well. He's probably going to get some Valkyries, and there's the starport. Probably going to go up to defend Jaedong's Mutalisks if they do in fact come, unless Jaedong does go for lurkers, and we'll see what Jaedong decides to do. He has not placed a building for whatever he's going to do yet, and as the layer is not up yet, so yeah. Machine shop going out for Fantasy. He's probably gonna get some vultures with mines. I can only assume, seeing as Fantasy loves vultures, and in every single game, Fantasy loves getting vultures. And there's the Spire, so Jaedong is going to go for a two-hatch Spire, two-hatch Mutas. I'm sorry. Uh, and Fantasy is getting a couple Wraiths out actually, so Fantasy's gonna get some Wraiths to combat this. And actually, Jaedong getting a Hydralisk Den in a not really hidden position because it's at his natural expansion, but Fantasy did not scout this. I believe Fantasy scouted the Spire, but did not see the Hydralisk Den going up. So we could see some lurkers, some surprise lurkers going up for Jaedong. There is Fantasy. He is expanding, and Uh, yep, there are vultures with mines, because Fantasy loves vultures and mines almost equally. And there's Jaedong. He's getting his third hatchery up now at the mineral only at the 10 o'clock position. And now there's a Wraith coming out, so the Wraith is probably going to notice the Hydralisk Den. And we'll see if Jaedong can uh, pull off a nice attack against Fantasy. And yeah, there's the Wraith. And a couple Hydras out. Kind of there. And the Wraith is going to see the Hydralisk Den and the Hydralisks. So I really don't know what Jaedong's going for right now. Engineering Bay now going up for Fantasy. He's probably going to get a couple of turrets up, and he's probably going to go back into Metagreen. And Jaedong's still only having slow overlords. He's probably upgrading that now. A couple vultures right there. They could possibly manage to get through. And there's a Wraith just harassing an overlord there. He probably won't get it out. And actually, the Wraith goes down. That's fail micro by Fantasy. But that's okay, because Fantasy did beat Jaedong multiple times. And, you know, he probably didn't care about that Wraith. He was like, oh, whatever. And there's a bunker now going up for Fantasy. Fantasy also transferring some probes and getting his science facility up, so he will be able to irradiate either mutas or lurkers if they decide to come out, or if he really needs to hydras. And actually, there is a mine there, and the overlord does not have speed yet, so they might actually get dragged into that mine. So we'll see if Fantasy's able to micro those hydras into getting that mine, and the mine does not go off on those hydras, which is a really good thing. It's nice by Jaedong, not just running in with those hydras, which would have completely destroyed them. And that overlord almost making it there, so this is good for Jaedong. He will be able to see those mines if he does decide to push in. It looks like actually the vulture is getting around, and I'm not sure if Jaedong left anything at home except for that sunken to defend against these vultures. He might go for a run by, and he is in fact going for a run by. Only one vulture manages to make it through, but that vulture still could kill a couple drones, and Jaedong is going for a pretty quick hive right there. It's only 7 minutes into the game, and he is getting his hive up really soon. So yeah, see what Jaedong decides to do. That vulture does have 4 kills. I'm sorry. It might get a 5th one, and it still might get a 5th one, but I think Jaedong can handle it. There is the vulture going into this expansion, probably gonna get, I'm going to say 2 more kills, and when I say 2 more kills, I mean 0 more kills. And actually, Jaedong going for the double gas as well, so he will have a huge amount of gas